Hello, class, and welcome to week 14. Just a couple weeks left, and now's the time to do what we can to either solidify the grades that we have, or if we need to do any improvements, then take the next couple weeks to really buckle down and do our best to gain as many points as possible to get the best grade possible. A couple things that we can do to make sure that happens are, as we look at the discussion board posts, just make sure you're posting those on time. It's a big hit every week. If you're taking a 10% hit every single week, your grade's obviously going to suffer. It's not beneficial to your grade. But secondly, it's not really fair to your classmates because there is a requirement for 2 responses to the discussion board posts. So if you're waiting to the last minute or turning them in late, you're not giving your classmates an opportunity to respond to as many uh, thoughts and ideas as possible as if you had included yours. This week, we also have our big 3-page writing assignment, the major writing assignment for the semester. That's going to be worth 20% of your grade. So make sure you put as much effort as you can into that. Make sure you turn it on time. I'd hate to see you lose 10% of that huge amount of your grade just because you didn't submit it on time. So those are going to be due on Friday. While I'm thinking about it, we have our final exam coming up in a couple weeks. That's also going to be 20% of your grade. So make sure you put effort into that as well. So the 3-page writing assignment is going to involve you discussing the moral and ethical considerations of mandatory minimum sentencing. Not only from your own opinion and your own perspective, which is obviously part of it, but also using the perspectives in the textbook, the theories that we've discussed throughout the semester, utilitarianism, deontology, social contracts, free will, things like that, all the different theories that we've discussed. I know I've discussed at length the theory of rational choice, so you can throw that in there as well. It's discussed a little bit in the book. Any of the theories of criminal justice that you want to discuss your opinions and thoughts of mandatory minimum sentences as you're looking through the lens of those theories, then you can do it. Just make sure you choose 2 of them, and it has to be at least 3 pages. And check the rubric. There are for all the other minute details. The rubric is posted in the course materials, and it'll tell you, as I've stated on other assignments, the rubric is essentially a cheat sheet on how to get 100%. If you do everything in the rubric that you're told to do, add as many citations as necessary, make sure you have in-text citations as well as references, meet your page requirements, discuss it through the number of theories that you're required to. If you do all those things, then you will get a good grade. It tells you exactly, there's no secret on how to get a good grade on this assignment. So make sure you look at that. If you have any questions on that assignment, by all means, reach out. If you have any challenges or some things you're not understanding, let me know. Let's transition over into this week's reading. So we're in week 14. So this week we are reading chapter 11. Chapter 11 talks about critical thinking in ethical dilemmas. One of the things you need to remember, one of the things you need to remember as you're going into solving and rationalizing ethical dilemmas is how are you going to go about thinking about the process to solve that dilemma? Critical thinking is essentially taking a step above what is offered to you in plain sight and taking a higher elevation view of the material and critically examining how to make that decision. It doesn't always have to be an ethical dilemma, but in this case it is. I added this week a video for you to watch, and I'll talk about it a little bit here, but I encourage you to watch the video about the allegory of the cave. Plato wrote this allegory, and I think it's a good example of how to view critical thinking and how life experience will change how you view the world and what lens you're looking through. So the allegory of the cave, real briefly, talks about some prisoners who are chained. They've been chained for their entire lives inside this cave, and they can only look at the back of the cave. They can only look at the wall. So behind them is a fire that's always going, and the opening of the cave, so a couple light sources. Everything they see, everything they hear, they can't turn their head. So everything they see is on the wall, the shadows on the wall. So if somebody walks by, they see the shadow. If they hear a voice, it's coming from the shadow. That's the only thing they've seen. They've only seen shadows. They've never seen people in their lives. So in their mind, shadows are real. Shadows are the actual item. There is no light source is casting a shadow. So if they hear a voice is coming from that shadow, if somebody's carrying something, all items are real only based on what's on that wall, because they've only seen that wall. They've never seen the real world. And at some point, one of the prisoners is given the opportunity to escape or is freed, and he goes outside the cave and he sees the real world. He sees real people. He sees animals. He sees the source of the sounds that he was hearing his entire life, and realizes the shadows are just something that's cast from the sun or from a light source. The real item is what he's looking at now, and his whole perspective, his mind is blown, his perspective has changed, and he realizes, I need to go back and tell my friends. They have no idea what's going on in the real world. And he goes back and they don't believe him because their mind hasn't been exposed to what he's seen. He's had different experiences. He's seen the real world, if you will. And so when he tries to explain that these items on the wall, these shadows aren't real, they can't fathom it, and they end up rejecting his ideas. So that allegory really goes to show how important life experience and diversity of experience is in creating and forming our worldview and our perspective of how we see the world. One of the things that I think about is when I sit in front of a classroom or I stand in front of a classroom and I give my perspective. My perspective is very narrow. It has where I was raised, how I was raised, my own personal life experiences, what I've seen, but it's absolutely different than what each of you have seen. I had a meeting this week with Dr. Wicker and Mr. Sullivan from the criminal justice program. And one of the things we discussed was just that, the diversity of experience, how that if you have somebody standing in front of a classroom, they can only give one very narrow perspective. It's so important to pull the experiences of every single student to help shed light on the material that we're discussing. And that's why these discussion posts, these discussion posts are so important, and why I encourage each of you to use your own life experience to help shed light for your classmates to understand how that material can be seen from a different viewpoint, and how I can see things from a different viewpoint. And that's what the allegory of the cave is talking about. Once the prisoner was released, he now had a different viewpoint than his fellow prisoners, and he can shed light on that. And it's so important for you not to be like the prisoners who rejected other people's opinions just because they had never experienced the same experiences. Keep your mind open. Things aren't always as we see them. Things aren't always, if you've only seen the shadow on the wall, realize that, hey, maybe there's more to life than just those shadows on the wall, and use that opportunity to critically think through these ethical dilemmas, and realize that if you're asking for advice or somebody gives advice or you hear opinions that are different than yours, just because something is different than how you saw the world, take some time to critically evaluate how that opinion may apply to your situation. So that's all for this week. If you have any questions, like I said, please reach out to me and we can discuss further either the allegory of the cave or the assignments that you have this week. Just remember, you do have a discussion board post and the 3-page paper, so you got a lot of writing to do this week, and as well as your responses. Post those responses, post those original discussion posts on time. They're due Monday, and it'll do a great deal to salvage points that you would have normally lost if you didn't post them on time. I look forward to reading not only your post this week, but I really can't wait to see your viewpoints and perspectives in the 3-page writing assignment. All right. Enjoy the rest of your week.